Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Guilherme. I'm the additional advisor at Casa Thomas Jefferson here. I think I know most of you, but I don't think you know Simon already. He's here to have his presentation to you. He will open up for questions in the end of the presentation. So that's the microphone for me.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone. How are you? Thank you for taking the time to come see me today. Hopefully this will be helpful as you think not only about the University of Chicago, but as you think about applying to highly selective schools in the United States in general. And don't worry, I will explain what highly selective means, because it might get a little bit confusing. My name is Simon Nascimento. I am the Director of International Admissions for the University of Chicago, and I also happen to be the admissions officer that reads applications and recruits students in Brazil. So if you decide to apply, I'll be the first person to read your application. So be nice to me. No, just kidding. I mean, be nice to me, but I'm not going to write down names or anything. But that also means that I'm the one that's reading your applications, your essays. I'm the one looking at your grades in high school as well, and I'm the one that can actually answer a lot of the questions that you might have during the application process about the application process itself, or the things that you can do at a place like the University of Chicago, academically or outside of the classroom as well. I don't want to spend too much time talking myself because I think it's going to be more beneficial to you if I spend as much time as I can just answering questions that you might have about the process of applying to schools in the States and also about the University of Chicago specifically. And you're going to see a bunch of pictures in the background as I talk. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about highly selective admissions and what that looks like. I'll use the University of Chicago as an example. And then we can start a very interactive question and answer session. Does that sound okay to you? Perfect. All right, so highly selective admissions. What does that mean? First, a lot of people are applying to that particular institution, and there is not enough space for all of them. This past year, the University of Chicago received about 26,000 applications to the college. We matriculate 1,400 students only. So out of 26,000, there is 1,400 students that will end up matriculating. Because we have a small college of about 5,000 students within the university, and the reason that a lot of universities want to keep their college size small is because of the kind of education that they want to give you. At the University of Chicago, I can tell you that all classes you're going to be in as a first-year student, all of our first-year classes have a maximum of 19 students in them. And they're discussion-based classes. You're going to be sitting around a table with your professor, talking, not reading what someone else thinks Plato said, actually Plato or Aristotle, or doing actual mathematical work in the classroom with your professor, discussing things with your professor in this small discussion-based setting. We also have a pretty good student-to-faculty ratio. So we have, on average, 7 students per faculty. So numbers in the single digits are a pretty good indication that you're going to have easy access to your professors at a particular institution. We also have resources in the university that we want you to have access to in a very meaningful and individualized way. So we keep class sizes small, we make sure that everyone has access to research opportunities, to jobs on campus. So that's one of the reasons that there are a lot of students applying to particular schools and there's not enough space. It's not because we like to be bad and keep people out. It's just that we want to make sure that if you get accepted, you're going to get the best possible kind of education there is. So that's number one in terms of being a highly selective institution. A lot of people are applying, and there is a small number of spots available in the class. But that's not all. The vast majority of the applicants, so looking at the 26,000 applications that we got at the University of Chicago, the vast majority of those students and I'm talking about 80 to 90% of them, were highly, highly qualified academically. They were top students at their high school. Everyone loved them. Everyone knows who they are because they were really, really strong students academically in their high school. So a lot of really good students trying to get accepted, what do? That's when you're going to start hearing the word fit. You have to choose a university that fits you. What is this fit that they keep talking about, and the voice that they want to hear, and the writing that you have to do? Well, I want to spend a few minutes then talking about the different parts of an application and how they help us make sure that we have looked at everything that you want to do when you go to college, and that you have identified us as one of the places where you can do all of those things. Because if the match is perfect, if we're giving you everything that you're looking for, then you're someone that should be accepted because there's fit. We have the things that you want, you have the things that we want. So a lot of people are applying to that particular school, and the vast majority of them are qualified academically. For that reason, we cannot base your admissions decision on a particular score that you get on a test or in high school. It's very different from going to university in Brazil. You take a test and you get a score, and if it's above a certain mark, you're in. If it's below, you're not in. Well, we cannot base it solely on academics. We, of course, want you to prove to any university during the application process that academically, they have no reason to worry about you whatsoever. So you want to make sure that they have really good grades in your 3 years of high school. So if you're in your second year and the grades are not as good, work harder because you have this year and then another one to go. We want to see that you are prepared, but because most of the applicants are, we cannot make our decisions based solely on academic ability. There are other things that will determine a student's admission decision. One of the things that you have to do when you apply to schools in the US is write. There is a lot of writing that you do in the application process. A lot of schools in the US use a form that for you to apply called the Common Application. That's where you give us your mailing address and a list of your extracurricular activities and the classes that you're taking. There is an essay that you have to write right there. They give you a few options, and then you write one of those essays. The Common Application, and this is if you're going to be applying to colleges in the US, you're going to become very familiar with the Common Application. That is a good application for you to use because it's easy. You fill it out once, and you send it to all of the schools that are on the Common App. That also means that the essay that you write for the Common App is going to go to all of the schools. That is not the place for you to tell me how much you love the University of Chicago, because I'm going to be very happy about it. And then there are 7 or 8 other schools that are not going to like it. So not the place to profess your undying love for a specific university. But what a lot of universities do, especially when you're talking about highly selective schools, they have a supplement to the Common Application with their own essay questions where they really want to see how you engage with an idea critically and intellectually, and why is it that you think you can go to this one school and be successful and be happy. So a lot of schools will have this addition to the Common App, and at the University of Chicago we do, and a lot of our peer institutions, so schools that are also big research universities that are highly ranked in some of the magazines out there that I don't know how I feel about them. They're not particularly good sometimes. So a lot of schools that are my peer institutions will have these supplements to the Common App where you can write. Here are some examples of questions that you might get. One of the ones that we have is, tell us about some of your favorite things. So you spend some time talking about a book that you like, a place that you like, something that you did that you really enjoyed, just something personal so you get a little bit more about you. Another one that you're going to find in almost every application that you complete is, why University of X? Why X college? That is perhaps the most important question you're going to find in this entire process. Finding a good answer to the why University of X is going to help you so much in terms of how many schools you apply to, in terms of how easy it's going to be for you or for a school counselor or coordinator that's helping you actually apply to these applications. The family that has to put up with you as you're looking at all these schools. I mean, it's just better for everyone else if you come up with a really good answer to this. Why University of X? Why X college? We spend a lot of time looking at that one because, again, we want to make sure that if we are bringing you to our campus, you know what you're getting yourself into. You've really thought about what you can do at my school specifically, and that the match is going to be positive, and that you're going to come and be excited in the classroom and outside as well. That's going to help you because if you start the process looking at 50 different schools in the U.S., no one should apply to 50 schools. Please don't do it. It's going to be too much work for you. You're not going to know the difference between 20 or 30 of those schools. As you try to come up with really good answers to the why University of X, that's when you're going to bring that list down to 15, 10, maybe even 5. And then you know that your applications are going to be really strong because you've actually spent a lot of time thinking about those schools. And you know that if any of those schools offers you admission, you can take it because you actually can see yourself going to that school and being excited. Because that's where we're going to find fit. And I have to tell you, I mean, I just mentioned a few seconds ago, rankings. Which schools are in the top 10, which schools are in the top 20 or whatever. Some people out there in the world believe that these are official US government rankings of universities in the United States, and that is a lie. These are magazines. Magazines made for a reason, to sell for a reason, that decide on the factors that they want to take into consideration when, coming out with rankings. And the factors that they might take into consideration might be meaningful or might not, or might be meaningful to you in your case specifically or might not. So I would urge you to not worry about rankings as much as you might as you begin the process, because you're going to get a much better education and a lot more satisfaction out of your education if you end up finding the school that matches the kind of academic and extracurricular experience that you're looking for when you go to the United States. And that might seem hypocritical of me to say that because we are highly ranked. But the thing is that even for us, if we're looking at an extremely competitive student, has all the academics, does a lot outside of the classroom, has a lot of energy, and would add to our community, if the factors that would tell me that that student is excited about the University of Chicago in particular, and would be excited about us in particular, even though you are a great student, I should not admit you. Because understanding what you want and the things that you want to do, and the fact that we don't necessarily offer those things, that's not a favor that I'm doing to you. You're going to come and you're going to hate it. You're going to be very miserable. And because we spend so much time making sure that we understand what you want and where you want to go, and understand how much you know about us, that at the University of Chicago we have a 98% retention rate, which is the number of students that come for a first year and then return for a second year because they're really happy with the experience. And the 2% that won't come back, it's usually because of family or other personal reasons as opposed to any academic challenges. Because they come and they find a home and they find the things that they want to do. So as you embark on this process, throw these magazines. I mean, these magazines are helpful as you begin because it gives you a list maybe to start with. There are over 4,000 different universities in the US, and some universities that you might not know might be much, much better in that one area that you're looking for than you might imagine. And not knowing university, I mean, that happens even in the United States. You go to one part of the country, they know all the universities in the neighborhood. They don't really know what happens across the country. So that's why you cannot limit yourself to this one list in a magazine that someone put together. Who is making these decisions for you? Why are you letting someone tell you which schools are worth your attention and which ones are not? You should be the one doing that. And yes, it's a lot of work because you have to go, you don't necessarily have a chance to visit, and you have to go on the website and see all the videos that they have up. read all the brochures, get in touch with current students. It's a lot of work. But you should do all that work, because then at the end you're going to have a pretty strong list of schools, you're going to write really strong applications, and that's when your application is going to be very competitive, and you're going to get the admissions decision at the end. Does that make sense? I also want to share with you a little bit about the uncommon essay questions that we have at the University of Chicago as an example of what you should be thinking and doing when it comes to the time for you to actually write the essay. For many, many years now at the University of Chicago, we ask you to write an additional essay when you're applying. It's usually a page or a page and a half. It's a short essay. And we give you topics to write about. But the way that we choose the topics are very particular. We send out an email to all of the students that just got accepted and decided to matriculate at the university, all of our current students in the college, and all of the alumni of the college, people that went to the University of Chicago and are out in the real world working. And we ask for submissions for topics of essays for the next cycle of applicants to write as they apply to the University of Chicago. We usually get 800, 1,000 different topics of varying degrees of quality. Some of them are pretty bad, but some of them are pretty good. Even the University of Chicago are not brilliant all the time, and we see that in the essays. But then, at the end, we get together as a committee of admissions officers and choose 4 or 5 options, and we present that to the next group of applicants to the college. And things get a little crazy. Has anyone had a chance to maybe look at some of the topics that we've had this year in the back? Can you remember any of the topics that we have this year?
There was something about, where is Waldo really?
One of the topics is, where is Waldo really? I believe that in Brazil, Waldo is called Wally or something. Yeah. Another topic that we had a few years ago was, how do you feel about Wednesday? Find X. What do I do? What's going on? Another one that I'll never forget. You walk into a supermarket, and you find these in America. You walk into the supermarket, and there's this huge, huge jug of mustard. What do you do with it? What do I do with these questions? The one thing that I want to know when I am reading our applications, and I read applications and make admissions decisions with my colleagues every year, is how you engage with an idea intellectually. I want to find critical thinking. I want to get to the end of your essay and understand how you think, how you explain that to me. Why? Because then I know that this is working. I know that you have the thinking to show up to class and read a text and be able to discuss it at a very high level with your colleagues, with your peers, and with the professor. I know that you have the thinking to go to your math class and do that math problem set. I know that you have the kind of thinking that it takes for you to come together in one of the over 400 student clubs that we have at the University of Chicago and plan an event or discuss something because you're thinking. Critical thinking, that's what I'm looking for, because basically I know that it's a skill that you'll get to use right away when you get to my campus, in the classroom and outside of the classroom as well. Critical thinking. That's what I'm looking for. As you start looking at books on how to apply school in the US, you're talking to people are going to be saying, share your voice, let's hear your voice. What is this voice that people keep talking about? It's basically understanding how you think. That's the voice. I need to get to the end of your essay, and things need to make sense. I'll get there and be like, wow, yes, you weren't necessarily talking about yourself, but this makes a lot of sense. I follow. I don't have to agree. I don't have to disagree. I just have to understand how you think. A lot of students spend way too much time trying to write what they think I want to hear. I have no idea how you come up with an answer to what it is that I want to hear, but the students spend a lot of time trying to write what they think the admissions officer wants to hear. And only a small percentage of students will actually write what they want to say. That small group of students that write what they actually want to say, those are the students that I remember. Those are the students that I get really excited about. Those are the students that I'm going to bring to my committee of admissions officers and say, I will lose my job today, but I'm getting this kid. We need to accept this kid into the class. Because you've told me something that only you can tell me. I would suggest an exercise. After you're done writing your essays, show it to your best friend. And just give them a couple minutes to read. And watch them. See how they react. At the end of the essay, they should be thinking, wow, yes, this is so you. I can hear your voice. That's something that you would say. That's how you would write. That's you. That's a very good sign. If they get to the end and say, wow, that's great. Who wrote it? Who wrote it? Who wrote this? Where'd you get this? That's not good. If it doesn't sound like you, a 16, 17-year-old applying to college, then it's probably not the right essay yet. You haven't gotten it yet. And remember, because there are no right or wrong answer, and because it is literally impossible for you to try and figure out what I want to hear, just tell me what you want to say. Because then you're going to say it well. Because it's you, your own words, it sounds like you. So something to keep in mind as you start looking at essays. Because that's, again, that's the part that's really meaningful to me. And again, you cannot come up with an answer to what it is that I want to hear. But again, the most successful essays are the ones that come from students that tell me what they want to say. Does that make any sense? Does that help you at all as you think about essays? And I think the last time I was at the American School in Brasilia 2 years ago, I gave an example of a bad essay that I'm going to tell you today. One of the topics that we had a couple years ago was, tell me about something that you've outgrown. A person, a dish, a place that you used to love and you don't love anymore. It's not as important to you anymore. And this one kid decided to tell me about how he outgrew his best friend. We were really good friends. I hate him now. We're not friends anymore. I was really curious. Wow, this is a pretty passionate and strong topic. Let's see what he has to say. He spent the entire essay just trash talking his friend. This guy is worth nothing, he's not a good guy, and yada yada yada. Which is fine. If you want to do that on your essay too, colleges in the US, it's okay. As long as at the end there's some sort of reflection, I understand the critical thinking, what you're trying to tell me, the experience and all of that, it's fine. Risky, but maybe it can be done. There wasn't anything at the end to explain. So as I finished reading the essay, I'm thinking, you were really good friends with this guy. Now you're not friends anymore. You don't like him, and that's why you should go to the University of Chicago. It doesn't make sense. Your goal should have me get to the end of your essay and think, I get it. Yes, I followed your, how you were thinking, what you were explaining. I understand. I learned something about you, not necessarily a biography, biographical kind of writing. It's not that I learned something about your life specifically, but now I understand how you relate to something, or how you think about something. The critical thinking is at work. That's what I'm looking for. And that is what it means to share your voice. This mystical voice that you hear about when you start looking at essays in the United States. And I have to tell you that the process of applying to schools in the US may at first seem very daunting, very complicated, because here you just take one test and that's it. And over there, there's just so many other factors that come in. And yes, it's a lot more comprehensive. But the good thing is that it takes into account the things that you've been doing in high school for 3 years, the things that you're doing outside of the classroom, a lot more. It takes the real you. One of the things that I will never forget from being accepted to the University of Chicago was my admissions letter that said, Simon, we took you not just because of numbers and scores, but because of who you are and what you will bring to our community. And what you're going to get out of it as well. I will never forget those words because it felt so good knowing that everything that I had worked on in high school, the things that I did outside of the classroom, all of those things counted. And they were taking me into their institution because they thought that I was a good match, and they were right. I was so happy as a student at the University of Chicago. So yes, the process of applying to schools in the US might seem very complicated at first, but it's just that there are more components to the process. And the reason for more components is that they think that you're much more than your grades. You're much more than a number, than academics. There's a lot more that we should know about you before deciding where you should go to school. And I've talked a few times in my short conversation about things that you do outside of the classroom. Everywhere I go, people will come up to me and say, okay, so how many years of community service do I have to do? And what do I have to do academically outside of the classroom? And I have to do a sport, right? Give me the formula. I don't know, what is this formula that you're talking about? I didn't know that it existed. People think that we want to see specific activities, or that you are the leader, the president of specific clubs, and that's what's going to make a difference. That is not true. What I'm trying to find out is, if we accept you to the University of Chicago, to another, to X college, the University of X, we have so much that you can do in the classroom, but we also have so much that you can do outside. You live on campus, there are clubs for you to join, there are things for you to do in the city or in the neighborhood. Are you going to do those things? Are you going to be a full member of our community? Do you have the energy and enthusiasm to do those things? Yes, you're going to be excellent in the classroom, but are you going to be excellent outside and happy and active? That's my question as I start reading your application. The things that answer that question correctly for me are looking at the 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you've been involved in for a sustained period of time. I mean, you've been working on this one project or this one place outside of the classroom for 1 year, maybe 2, maybe even more. These are the things that are meaningful to you. If it's community service, then it's community service. But it might be something academic. It might be something that you do as an internship or as a part-time job. Whatever it is that you do outside of the classroom because you enjoy, and you take the time to do it, and you've been doing it for a year or 2, those are the things that are going to be meaningful to me as I'm looking at our application and trying to figure out if you're going to be active outside of the classroom. So the reason that you list extracurricular activities is not because you have to be in specific clubs. It's because I need to know that you're going to come and enjoy yourself outside of the classroom as well. You're going to join a club, play a sport, do research, things outside of the classroom because we have them and we want you to take part in them. And the way that I find out if you have that kind of energy or not is by looking at what you have been doing in high school in the past 1, 2, 3 years. Does that make sense? And again, it's not a specific list. I mean, you might have found the hot chocolate drinking club. It's you and your brother. You get together every Wednesday to drink hot chocolate, and you're the president of the club. Whoa, you're the president of the hot chocolate drinking club with your brother. That's not meaningful. Now, that one other thing that you might be doing, not even as the president, you're just part of the group for the past year or so. You've been doing it for a year. You like it. It's meaningful to you. That's going to be more meaningful to me and any admissions officer reading your application. I want to stop right here. I've talked about some of the parts of the application because I feel like when we open it up for questions, there are going to be other things that I might have forgotten that I can cover. And hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you will have learned not only a little bit more about the University of Chicago, this school that I went to, and this school that I worked for, but also something that you can take home about the process of applying to schools in the US, especially when you're looking at higher study institutions. So I'll stop right now, and I will take all of the questions that I'm sure you have. Oh, that's a very good question. The question is about scholarship, financial aid. When you start looking at universities in the US as an international student, there are a few extra steps that you have to go through that someone that has a US passport or a green card might not have to worry about. When you have a US passport or you have a green card, that means that you had access to university-specific money, money that the university has set aside for students for financial aid, but you also had access to US government money, loans or grants through the government of the United States. If you are not, if you are an international student with no green card, no US citizenship, that usually means that you do not have access to any US government money. So you depend on the money that comes from the institution specifically. We are very lucky at the University of Chicago to be in a small group of universities that do offer financial aid for international students. And our policy is actually that if you get accepted, the hard part is to get in, but if you get accepted and you apply for financial aid, we look at your financial aid information, we calculate how much your family can contribute, if your family can contribute. We look at how much it costs to attend the University of Chicago, including housing and food and all of that stuff. Whatever the difference is between what your family can pay and how much it costs, that number is your demonstrated need, your demonstrated financial need. We give you that. We give you. It's not money that you have to pay back at the end. If you need $5,000 a year, you get $5,000 that you never have to pay back. If you need $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, we give that to you if you get accepted, and that's not money that you have to pay back. Now, some schools have more money than others. That means that some schools will be what's called need sensitive for international students applying for admission and financial aid. That means that at some point during the process, we will see, the admissions officer will see, that you are also applying for financial aid. That if you get accepted, we will use some of our money for you to come to the University of Chicago. Because our budget is limited, and we're covering everything that you need, we start accepting students and giving out money. Accept, here's the money. Accept, here's the money. At some point, there's no more money. I've used it up. At that point, I cannot accept anyone else because I don't have the money to give you if you apply for admission and financial aid. That's what need-sensitive means. But I will tell you from experience in reading applications and being in committees for international students applying for financial aid, if we want you, if you are a top student, if everything is shining, we see academics, we see extracurriculars, we see that you really thought about the University of Chicago, we see fit, I don't care if you need money or not, I will accept you. We accept the students that we want to accept. And if you happen to have applied for financial aid, we'll give you the money that you need. And our hope at the end of the day is that you can come to the University of Chicago because you really wanted to come to the University of Chicago and you don't have to worry about money. Or if different schools accepted you and all of them offered you financial aid, that's perfect. You take money out of the question and you choose the university that you want to go to based on where you want to go to as opposed to where you can afford to go. That is our hope. But that is not the case at all institutions in the US. So if you're going to need financial aid, you have to go through the extra, you have to go the extra mile and identify the schools that, give financial aid, see if they give financial aid to international students. Is that money grants, so money that you don't have to pay back? Is that loans you're going to have to pay back at some point? Can they cover 100% of what you need or just one portion of what you need? And when they calculate your financial aid package, are they looking at everything when it comes to the cost of attending that institution, or just the cost of tuition, or just the cost of going to class? Those are things that you have to think about. But there are a lot of schools in the United States that do have financial aid for international students, and they're very excited to bring international students. And here's why. When you bring to my campus, you bring a different perspective to the classroom, to the campus. That's great for you, that's great for everyone in your class, especially Americans that might have never lived abroad, have not had the chance to study or visit another country. Go into a top university where after they graduate, they're probably going to be getting a job in a big city, in an office with people from all over the country and all over the world. It's very important for universities in the US that during those 4 years, you learn how to work with people that come from a different background than yours. Whatever that means. if it's from a different country, a different religion, a different economic background, because that's the reality of the workplace after you graduate from that institution. And the universities in the US want to make sure that you are prepared and very competitive for that. That's why they have the funds and the money to send me down here to visit you today, because we know of the value that you add to our campus as you come as an international student, the things that you do to our community, and how much we gain from having you there. More questions?
Mr. Nesman?
Yes.
How do you calculate my financial needs? Give me an example.
Different schools will use different forms. At the University of Chicago, I believe we use the form that is the most popular for international financial aid. It's called the International Student Financial Aid Application. It's a form that each school will have on their website, but it's a form through the College Board, which is the board that has the SAT exams and all of that. We ask you to fill out the International Student Financial Aid Application. 4 pages. It asks about salary, any savings account, any assets that you might have, if you own a house, how much it's worth, if you have a car.
Proof these things.
First, you fill out the form, and then you send documents that prove the stuff that you put in the form. So if you said that you have 20,000 US dollars in a bank account, then you send a bank statement. If your family files a tax return in Brazil, the tax return usually has all of the information. So that's, if you do, then you usually send us a copy of that because it has everything, you don't need anything else. But whatever you put on the form, if you fill out a line, then you send us a document to prove, just to make sure that everything matches. And that's what the office will use when it's calculating what the family can contribute and how much the university can put in for you to come. We will not touch your pension fund, so if you have a retirement fund, we still want the parents to retire one day and leave a happy, comfortable life, so schools will not touch that. But then there is an expectation that the family, that it's an investment and that the family should contribute to their son and daughter's education to the extent that they can. And taking into consideration if there are other kids, in school and the expenses, all of that is taken into account. So there is an expectation of contribution to the extent that the family can contribute. So we have students that don't pay to go to school because the family couldn't contribute, especially when you're looking at what it is in Brazilian reais and then how much that means in US dollars. And we see that you can't even pay for 1 quarter or 1 semester, so we're not going to make you pay. So the university, in our case, we have the ability to come in and fund the student completely. But it varies a little bit from school to school.
All right, Simon, you said that the common application is not the place to gush about a particular school because everybody reads that. But at the same time, you said your school gives questions. Different schools might give different questions, so what's the degree of customization and your control regarding like who sees what in the common application? And then, still on the common application, could you talk a little bit about the uploading of translated materials like recommendation letters, transcripts, financial documents, things like that?
The common application, whatever you put in on the common app is for everyone to see. If you list a school on the common app as a school that you're going to be applying to using the common app, every school will see everything that you put on the common app. It's common. Open, we all see everything that you put on the common application. The schools that want more, they will add a supplement to the common application. And that's where you pour your heart out and tell us about how much you love one specific school. That's what we do. That's what a lot of my peer institutions will do. That's where they have their own customized ones. You should put together a really strong common application that shows how you think, how you write, that lists all the things that you canvas in the common app to show how good you are as a student. But understanding that that will go out to any and every school that you apply to using that common application. And then the personalized stuff that goes for specific schools, you're going to add separately if they have a supplement. In terms of materials and the actual process of submitting an application, please, please, please submit your common application and the supplement, if there is one, online. It's easier for everyone. A lot of my colleagues in different universities have moved away from paper applications completely. I read on that computer right there. That's one of the computers that I use to read applications. Everything is electronic. We want to save the world, save trees, so we moved away from papers. But that's not all. It has happened in the past that the morning of admissions decisions, the day that we release decisions, I got a packet in the mail with an application. At that point, the cycle is over. It came from a country where the mail system wasn't very good, and it got to us 3 months later, and I'm very sorry, but there's nothing I can do. The things that you have control over are two things: the common application and the supplement to the common app, if there is one. You have control over those two things, and you should submit them electronically through the Common App website. Everything else should arrive with your application or a few days later, but it's not a problem if it's not there at the same time. So you send your stuff in because that's your responsibility. You follow the deadline. And if your teacher prefers to write a letter and actually send it via mail, that's fine. Just write your name and whatever identification number the school gives you to identify the system. We'll get it, we'll scan it, and add it to the file to complete the file. But at least we know that you are an applicant. And you apply in January. If in February, the beginning of February, I realize that there's stuff missing, I know you exist. So I will send you an email saying, hey, we're still missing this. Can you send us the missing materials? We do our best to make sure that you have a chance to complete your application and be reviewed for admission. And one way that you can help us do that is submitting your Common App and the supplement, if there is one, electronically. Everything else, if you have to submit it via paper copies, that's fine, we'll take those, but at least I know that you're in the system. Now for additional recommendation, additional materials, the Common Application will give you an opportunity to upload an additional page or an additional file to your Common App. Remember, that goes to all of the schools, so it has to be something that you want all of the schools to see. And then different schools will have different ways of letting you upload more stuff. When you apply to the University of Chicago, after we receive your application and do the initial processing, we'll send you an email and we'll create for you a UChicago account where you can keep track of all your application materials and where you can upload anything that's missing that we ask you to upload, and where you're going to get a notification of your admissions decision. So that's how you do with us. And I know that most of my peer institutions, most of other schools that I know, they have some sort of online account where you can keep track of everything and send any additional information. But you have to check with each school and keep track of everything to make sure that you're sending everything that the school needs in order to review your application. Anything that you send in a language other than English, so if you send anything in Portuguese, you have to send the copy of the Portuguese version, but you also have to send an official translation. I know that here at CTJ, they do official translations and they can help you find other places as well, but you have to. So be it a letter of recommendation that your teacher decided to write in Portuguese because they don't speak English, that's fine. I mean, they can write it in Portuguese and then you get a translation of that, an official translation. Or the bank statement that is in Portuguese and you get a translation of that and you write down the equivalent in US dollars as well. So other, things that you have to think about.
Which one is uploaded to the Common App? The translation or the original version?
If you cannot, so the question is, which one should I upload through the Common Application website? And this is a question from the teacher or the counselor that's sending us, the university, your grades, as are conditional of that. If you can put them in one file, both of them in one file, one PDF, and upload it, then do both at the same time. If you have to choose one, upload the English one. But schools still do like to see both. So if there's a way for you to, send an email to the school with an attachment, or if there's an online account that you can use to upload something, then just make sure that we have both.
And the proficiency test, how much do you take to go for the research?
English proficiency exam?
Yeah, like also.
Yeah. When you go, this already, but when you go to the States, your classes are going to be in English. So you have to prove that you can get there and do the work in English. It's very important. Your professors might have trouble speaking Portuguese with you. Different schools will have different, minimum requirements for the TOEFL. I mean, we don't have any minimum requirements in any other part of the application process. No minimum grades or SATs. We want them to be good, but there's no minimum because it varies a lot from school to school. When it comes to English, though, we do. And the reason that we at the University of Chicago have a minimum is because we have no English as a second language classes. So if you get there and you need help with your English, we don't have help for you. And we don't want you to go home to go back to your room and cry because you can't understand the class. So we need to know that you are ready to do the work in English at a very high level. The internet-based test, the TOEFL test, goes up to 120. That's the maximum that you can get on the TOEFL IBT. We want to see a minimum of 104. We strongly encourage 104. We will take students that have slightly lower than 104 if all of the other parts of the application show that English is not a problem. If it's too much lower, then you get nervous. Because you're going to struggle. You're not going to be able to do the work. My peer institutions, so highly selective schools, usually have it around 100. So if you have the score for the University of Chicago, there is no other school in the nation where you're not going to be okay. Because I think so far ours is the highest, 104 out of 120. And it's not to be bad, it's just to make sure that you are prepared. Yeah.
Just thinking a little bit farther on the road, I found a problem coming back to Brazil and validating the course. Have you been already through a problem like that situation, that you cannot validate the course here in Brazil because the subjects are not comparable or something?
So the question is about validating your degree. You go to the States, you are very happy, you do 4 years of college, and then you come back with a diploma. And do they recognize the diploma? Because I don't work with current students, that's the Dean of Students Office, I haven't worked with students directly on that issue, but I get asked this question a lot, not only in Brazil, but when I'm traveling in Latin America and other parts of the world, about validating your diploma when you come back. The answer that I have is not a good one, you're not going to be happy, but you do have to chat with your Ministry of Higher Education, your Ministry of Education. Not just because they have the final word, they're the ones that decide whether or not you're going to validate your diploma. It changes. So you have to check with them. Maybe before you go, you take a look just to see, because then when you are there, you can sort of control in terms of which classes you can take to make sure that you're fulfilling both requirements. But you have to be the one doing the work and making sure that you have everything that is in accordance with what they have. Or in the case where they want you to take an additional course, or if you want to return to Brazil to get your diploma validated, they know what those are as well.
I can speak to that a little bit. I work here at the CASA with the Education USA office, and there is an effort here within Brazil with the Conselho Nacional de Educação to reform that, so that in keeping with where Brazil is now with the internalization of education and everything, that degrees are recognized automatically, but there is resistance to that. Legislation needs to be passed for that. So that hasn't happened yet. The current system is such that you have to find a federal university in Brazil that has an equivalent program. And then you have to submit documentation about the courses and the program so that they can validate. So the advice is save everything. Save your syllabus for every class, course descriptions, papers, tests, and then when the time comes to go through that process, you have all the documentation, and that will likely have to be translated because you have to submit it to a university. So unfortunately, it's a complicated process, and if you major in an area that doesn't have an equivalent major in Brazil, then that becomes a problem. But I'll tell you this, I have a master's degree from an American university, and coming to Brazil and working at a place at Casa Thomas Jefferson, I wasn't required to present, a validation of my degree in Brazil because my employer understands my degree from the United States and accepts it.
And if you're going back into academia, I mean, if you did your bachelor's degree in the US and now you want to come back to Brazil and do a master's or a PhD, in that case, I mean, you have to have your program validated because you need to show that you have your first degree in order to get the next one. But chances are, if you go to a university in the United States, the kinds of jobs you're going to be interested in and looking for are probably going to be jobs where the employer will understand the kind of background that you bring, and they're actually going to appreciate that you have that kind of educational background. But again, you have to go in and check and do all the work because it might change. And I hope that we get to a place where it gets recognized all that, because that would be great. But just making sure at every step of the way that you at least know what the process looks like and what you have to do or will have to do at the end of your program.
I have the impression that the bureaucratic process is being simplified, especially because of the project Science Without Borders.
Yeah, the government announced an initiative of 75,000 scholarships for Brazilian students to go abroad, mostly in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And because of that, I'm sure that that's a really big incentive to make sure that those classes taken outside of Brazil are recognized when you come back. So it's a good sign. It seems that things are moving in a really good direction.
Is the University of Chicago with the Science Without Borders?
The University of Chicago is with the Science Without Borders. The thing is that some schools with the Science Without Borders program, they have given the admissions process to an outside agency like the Institute for International Education, and they do the admissions for the universities in the United States. We still have our power of admission, so as a Science Without Borders students to the college, for example, if you want to come as an undergraduate as opposed to a master's or a doctoral student, you apply to my office as an exchange student. And you go through my exchange student process, and if you get accepted, you come and you study for 1 trimester or 2 or a whole academic year. But we do, and I get emails almost every day from Science Without Borders students, and I'm answering that myself actually.
Would you say that it's more difficult to get into the university, to get accepted, if you're already in university here?
The question is it more difficult to get accepted into university in the United States if you are already a university student here? It depends. Because when it comes to transfer admissions and first year admissions, universities they're very autonomous when it comes to, there's no one admissions process in America for students in that situation. In my institution at the University of Chicago, if you are a student at a university here in Brazil, and you complete your first year, you have finished your first year, from that point on, you can only apply to the University of Chicago as a transfer student. It's our institutional rule. If you have not finished that first year, you may still apply as a first year applicant. But the moment you finish the first term, then from that point on, for me, you can only apply as a transfer, which is a problem sometimes because unfortunately, we do not have financial aid for transfer students. Now, I know schools where you can apply as a transfer and you can receive financial aid. I know schools that will let you apply as a first year student even if you started school here. So you have to identify the schools that you want to apply to because the answer will vary. But, if they have a transfer process, they want transfer students. It's just that you have to figure out what that means. If you need money, is there going to be money? Are your credits going to transfer? Hopefully so, because they're transfer students, so you want your credits to transfer. So you have to look at those things.
Hi. I know this lecture is mainly directed at students applying to college. but I am in college. I'm graduating in economics. And
Oh, you Chicago economics.
yeah. In the future, I plan on doing my MBA in the States, and of course,
The Booth School of Business, yeah.
Yeah, Booth School of Business. Chicago is very strong in economics. Do you also take care of those type of admissions, or any particular too?
Haha, that was another question. Thank you. I'll take more of a first. Admissions to professional schools or master's or doctoral programs, they have the power. At the University of Chicago, anyone applying to the college, and if you're from Brazil, comes through me. Now, for the master's, PhD, and professional programs, each department, not even school, each department has a separate admissions office. So in the humanities, the English department has their admissions office. And the other department of the humanities has a different admissions office. So they just grab onto that power and they will not, share. So in that case, you have to work with specific schools. For an MBA program, I know that ours is really good. I have met students and people that work in admissions at Booth, and I know that they're coming to Brazil at some point. I think there's going to be an MBA tour coming, and I think that they're coming for that. But you have to get in touch with their admissions office, because I know a little bit just from what I hear, but I would not want to give you wrong information. But that goes to anyone looking at, a master's or a PhD program. If you're applying to the University of Chicago for a master's in linguistics or a PhD in linguistics, but you also want to look into maybe history, you are sending 2 applications. Because linguistics will look at your linguistics application and history will look at your history application. And they're separate entities. Even though it's all at the University of Chicago. I think in Brazil you're used to just going to one office in the university and saying, hey, how do I get a master's here? And there's one secretary or someone there that can walk you through the process. But even here, if you're doing higher level work, master's and PhD, you still have to connect with specific professors in the department. It's just that they take that autonomy to a whole new level in the States. It's very decentralized.
I have 2 questions. Declaring a major, good or bad? And 2, can we talk a little bit about the admissions cycles, early decision, early action, early learning?
Declaring a major, choosing what it is that your diploma is going to say you studied. One of the most exciting things for me when looking at the University of Chicago was the core curriculum. Anyone, regardless of what kind of major you wanted to have or what kind of profession you wanted, to have afterwards, would take classes in the core, and classes in the humanities, social sciences, math, art, different components that you fulfill. That was great for 2 things. First of all, I did not have to decide right away. And here, you take one test, you tell them right there, I want to study math. And if you go and you decide that you hate math, well, too bad. You have to take the test again. And at the University of Chicago, with liberal arts schools, you don't have to make that decision right away. You have time to try different things before you decide on that one thing that you actually want to pursue as a major, as your concentration. I arrived at the University of Chicago as a psychology major. I took classes in different departments through the core, and I decided that I liked international studies way better, and I ended up majoring in international studies. I was so happy that they understood that I was only 17 or 18, that I was not ready to make that big decision on a specific major, and they gave me time and actually encouraged me to try different things before deciding on one. So I'm a very big fan of the liberal arts education offered at American universities. Here's another thing that people don't necessarily associate with liberal arts educations. You think, oh, but I want to study physics, but you want me to read a philosophy book and then arts and English? Are you crazy? Or are you going to be wasting my time? It's very rare for you to find a profession these days that requires one and only one specific kind of thing. It is very rare for you to find a profession today where you're going to be talking to, where every person that you talk to is going to be from the same profession or academic background that you have. I think, and I live this as I go around the country and the world and talk to different people, I think that I'm much more prepared professionally because of this well-rounded education that forces me to take classes in areas that are not related to my subject of choice, because I can talk to anyone across disciplines. I can analyze a problem 360 and relate to people from a background that is different from my academic background because I received a liberal arts education. So at first, you might be thinking, that's very, hippie of you to think that I should be taking these, lofty classes in areas that are not. No, it's very smart. Because you're getting this specialized education in a field, in math, science, technology, whatever it is, but you're going beyond, and you can actually write a paper and publish a book because you have all the writing and all the research techniques from the other classes that you took. You can give a presentation because you took a theater or drama class and they put you on a stage and made you talk in front of people. So now when you go into a room, you are fine. You can go to a meeting and do that. So I think that our initial reaction, especially if you're coming from the kind of education, higher education environment that you have in Brazil and in Latin America and in the world in general, that's very technical and vocational and specialized. It is natural for us to think that a liberal arts curriculum is going to be distracting you from the thing that you want to study, and that's where you're wrong. That means that in addition to that specialized training that you're going to receive in a specific field, you have more, you're more holistic, and that's the kind of professional that we need today, and here's why. By the time, there was a study, and this is, I'm quoting a friend that works in admissions at the University of Pennsylvania. There was a study done in the United States that said that by the time you are 40 or 44, you will have had 11 different jobs. And those might have been in different fields and different career paths. Half of those haven't even been invented. It's very arrogant of a university to think that we can train you today for this one profession. That's going to look so different in 5 or 10 years. Yes, we have to give you the technical training for that one profession, but we have to give you more. We have to teach you how to learn, and that's what a liberal arts education will do to you. Anything will come your way in your career, in your profession. You'll find people from a different academic or professional background, and you're going to be fine because you have the critical thinking skills, and that's what liberal arts education will give you. So I'm a big, big fan, not just because I got to take classes that I never imagined I would go in college, but also because I feel in my day-to-day work that it has prepared me at a level that's much higher than something, than if I had only focused on one specific thing. So if you can't tell by now, I'm a big fan of a liberal arts education, and I was very, very happy with the kind of education that I received at the University of Chicago.
Does the University of Chicago have athletic scholarships? Could you talk a little bit about that?
We play in the Division III in an association called University Athletic Association. We are forbidden from giving athletic scholarships. So our athletes, they compete at a very high level, but they are as qualified academically as anyone else on campus. We give financial aid for those that need it. So our athletes that need money will get money, but and this is true for anyone, we don't have. And that's why I don't use the word scholarship. I use financial aid. Because scholarship gives the idea that it's tied to a specific skill that you have. Play the piano, you play volleyball, it's tied to a specific skill. And we don't do that. We do financial aid. If you get accepted because we read your application holistically and we think that as a whole you should be a student at the University of Chicago, we will look at how much money you need, and we give you a financial aid package that covers that. So even the language we've changed a little because we want to move away from the idea of scholarships and specific talents. We want all kinds of talents.
So do you have a merit scholarship?
Merit scholarships. Some universities will also give you the option of applying to merit. Maybe you don't need money. You're fortunate to be in a family where you can afford to pay 4 years of university in the US. But more money is always good. You can save a little bit. So merit is based on academics. At the University of Chicago, we're one of the few schools that offers both need-based, based on how much money you actually need, and merit-based, that have nothing to do with need. It has everything to do with your merit as a whole in your application. For us, we offer them, they can go anywhere from $1,000 a year to $10,000 or $15,000 a year. Everyone that gets accepted into the University of Chicago should automatically receive a merit scholarship, in my opinion, because you made the cut, you deserved it, you really merited it. But we have a small budget, so about 7 to 10% of the matriculating class will receive some sort of merit scholarship. There's no separate application for me, you just say yes on the common application when they ask you if you want to be considered for merit scholarship. Some schools will actually ask you to complete a separate application, write an essay, send something. And in our case, it's a group of admissions officers and professors. We don't really have control over who gets married. It's the professors looking at the applications with us and saying, ooh, I want that student and I want that one. Let's throw money at that one. I mean, so it's the professors getting excited and we don't have control of that.
And what about your reaction or your decision?
And the second question that Emma asked was about the different kinds of cycles that you can apply through. A lot of schools give you the option of applying early. Usually classes in the US will start in August or September. That's when the academic year starts. But you have to apply way early. You apply in January to those schools to start classes in August or September. A lot of schools will give you the option of applying early, meaning that you can apply in, say, November, and you get your decision around mid-December, whether or not you have been accepted to that university. There are 3, as far as I know, types of ways of applying early to an institution if they give you that option. One is called early decision. Early decision is a contract. You have thought about all of your options, and through your hard work and months of research, you've identified this one school as your #1 choice. You want to go to this university. And you want to show your commitment to this university by applying early decision because you know that if they accept you, you have to go. You have signed a contract with them. That's early decision. If they accept you, you drop all of your other applications and you go to that one school where you applied early decision. Because it's a contract, of course, you can only apply to one school early decision. Because if 2 schools accept you through early decision programs, you have to split yourself in half. And one half will go to one school and the other half will go to other school. That's not going to be pretty. So you can only apply to one school early decision. For those schools, it makes a huge difference if you apply early. Because they are actually looking to fill 40% of the class sometimes early. So it will make a difference if you get your application early because, again, they're trying to fill the class early. Now, there are 2 other options that I want to talk about that are non-binding. These are not contracts. So when it's binding, we say early decision. When it's not binding, when it's not a contract, we call it early action. There is one early action option called early action single choice. You apply to this school early to get a decision early. If they accept you, that's great. They would love for you to come. You don't have to. You have time to apply to other schools regularly if you want. Look at your other options. And then you have until May 1st the following year to decide whether or not you want to go to that school. But you can only apply to one school early. That's why it's called early action single choice. You can only apply to that one school early, no one else. And then we are the non-jealous type. We have early action, period. You can apply to us early if you are ready, if we are one of your top choices. You can also apply to other schools early if you want to. As long as they're okay with it, we're okay with it, that's fine. And if you get accepted to the University of Chicago early, you get your decision around mid-December, we would love for you to say, yes, I want to come. but we give you the time to wait until May 1st and look at your other options before deciding to accept or not or offer of admission. So early decision is a contract. Early action, single choice. Not a contract, but you can only apply to one school early. And then the University of Chicago is early action. You can apply to other schools if they're okay with it, we're okay with it. Can you apply to several early action schools? Yes, as long as none of those schools is early action, single choice. I can tell you, for example, I was traveling in April, I was in the Middle East visiting schools in a bunch of countries, and I was at the University of Pennsylvania and Yale University. The three of us were traveling together. And Penn has early decision. So you can apply to Penn early decision. You can apply to the University of Chicago early action because it's okay with Penn and it's okay with me. You cannot apply to Yale because Yale is early action single choice. If you apply to Yale, you can't apply to the other ones, for example, because they have single choice. If you apply to me, you can apply to Penn, that's ED. If you apply to Penn Academy, but if there's one single choice, then you can't do it. And if there's you cannot have more than one ED early decision because again, you're going to have to split yourself to go to both schools because you signed two contracts.
SATs, should I do them?
SATs, there are a few standardized tests that you need to take, you typically need to take when you apply to schools in the US. The SAT is a test of math and also reading comprehension, text comprehension, English. There are two parts to it. The test is in English, so it's mathematics in English, and then English in English, of course. Reading comprehension, vocabulary, and all of that. So that's the SAT. And then there's another option available these days called the ACT, which in addition to math and English and the writing component, it also has a science component, and there's, what else is in the ACT? So math, English,
Four area tests.
Math, English, science, reading, and then there's a writing component as well that you can take. Most will ask you to submit official test scores. The SAT, for example, each section goes up to 800. So if you're looking at math, it goes up to 800. If you're looking at the critical reading part, 800. And then there's another writing part that goes up to 800 as well. When it comes to standardized testings, it's very good if you can present yourself to a university in the US with really strong grades in high school and a combination of strong test scores. However, we understand and we actually expect that you're not going to do as well on the SAT, for example, or the ACT as someone who went to a school in the United States and trained his or her entire life to take the SAT. And that doesn't mean that you're not prepared. It just means that you're not used to the test. You had never heard of it until a few months before you took it. So that's why I will look a lot more closely to the other parts of your application and not really the SAT. I'll spend a lot of time looking at your 3 years of high school and how you did there and how your teachers are talking about you. But it is in your favor to show really strong grades in high school, but also strong testing. Because if it gets too low, then my question is the testing here really low because he was not familiar with the test? Or is it because his English lab was not as good? Or is it because academically he's not as prepared? Even though in his high school he seems to be a top student, but maybe it's not as rigorous in the school. So that's where questions start to come up if the testing is really low. I will be honest with you, every time I see an application from Brazil or Latin America where in each section out of 800 you're scoring below 600, I get a little nervous. It doesn't mean that I cannot accept you because we do accept students that have, I have in the past and probably will still do. But it's just that if it's below 600, I just get nervous because I don't know what that means. Are you prepared? You're not? Can you speak English? Can you not? But I don't worry as much about the SAT as students think I do. So keep that in mind. Because I know that what's more meaningful to me is how you've done in high school in the 3 years that you were there. And that's the part that I like. I mean, you worked so hard, I hope, in high school, and now you basically reap the benefits of having worked that hard, as opposed to, you know, going into a world with a bunch of people that studied at some, you know, prep course, take the entrance exam to the University of Brazil and get accepted, even if they did nothing in high school. That's not fair. Don't tell them this. I will be available for questions up front. Actually, you should come up front if you have specific questions, because I have some University of Chicago stickers that you can take home if you want. I will also leave you my business card if you want to send me an email. I'm going to be traveling for a little bit for work, so I might not get back to you right away, but I will get back to you eventually and answer your questions. There's a lot that we have on our website. We understand that it's very difficult for a lot of our international students to actually come and visit our campus, so we're doing everything that we can to have more videos of campus online, current international students talking about their experience, sharing photos of what they do on campus and outside, making as interactive and as complete as possible with you specifically in mind, to make sure that you can learn as much as you can about us, and if you decide that it's a good option, that you can send an application. I hope this was helpful. I thank you again for coming for my session today. Again, I will be available to answer any questions if you come up front. And for the big surprise, if you don't know this already, eu sou de Catalão, Goiás. Fico algumas horas, uns 3 ou 4 horas aqui de Brasília. Então, eu também vim de escola brasileira, estudei fora. Eu já tive aqui. Eu fui jovem embaixador, que é o programa da Embaixada Americana. Fui para os Estados Unidos em 2005. Eu fiz o meu TOEFL aqui na casa do Thomas Jefferson, quando eu estava mandando a application para os Estados Unidos. Eu voltei aqui quando eu estava na faculdade para um grupinho de English Immersion, que vieram passar umas semanas aqui no verão. Eu vim com uma amiga minha dos Estados Unidos que estava passando o verão com a minha família em Goiás para aprender português, falar português com sotaque de Goiás. Então, eu sou daqui, eu passei pelo mesmo processo que vocês estão olhando agora, então, se vocês precisam de prova suficiente que dá para fazer, que não é impossível.
Eu acho que o Simon é um exemplo absolutamente fantástico de tudo aquilo que vocês podem fazer também. Eu tenho imensa admiração pelo talento, pela inteligência, pela dedicação e a persistência dele. Realmente nós sentimos esse imenso orgulho de você, Simon. Por isso que eu não podia deixar de ir e te dar um abraço.
Okay, if you guys have questions, come up front.